Hey, how's it going? This is Frazier with Keller Williams Buckhead, and I have Scott Murphy with DS Murphy and Associates, an appraiser, and everyone has lots of questions with for an appraiser. So this is your opportunity, and we really just want to come and educate you today from a buyer's perspective, from a seller's perspective, and from an industry perspective. So.
Great. I'm glad to be here with you. I love teaching. We have a school, we teach a lot of classes, and to me, learning is earning. So,
Oh yeah. Actually, that's how I connected with them. They taught a class at our office about valuating property, which as a real estate agent is something that you definitely need to know. But these are things that I want to talk to you about from a home buyer's perspective. Let's start with that first.
great.
One of the things that I've actually seen out selling real estate that some buyers have been caught up with or snags is FHA VA loans, and FHA loans are pretty common these days
Yes.
and very popular these days. But one of the things that you have to be concerned with or be cautioned with when you're looking for properties is that if the property is a fix and flip, and if they purchase the property under the FHA loan, then it presents a problem.
Right.
Especially if they just purchased the property within the last 6 months. Now, I know that there are some guidelines like appraisal are attached to properties for a certain amount of time.
Right. A couple things come up. If there's been a recent transaction on the property, then the FHA will require two appraisals, and they're going to take the lowest of the two appraisals. They don't average. And then, another thing with FHA is that when an appraisal gets done, it stays with that property. What really happens is you're stuck with that appraiser for 120 days. From the day that the case number is ordered, for 120 days, that appraiser stays there. So if there's an appraisal done on a property, it comes in low, that buyer goes away, another buyer comes in, no matter where they go for a mortgage, they still got to use that same appraiser. Now, everyone thinks you're stuck with that value. The appraiser is obligated to update the report if there have been recent sales that would change his value.
Yeah, so that's something that, give an example. Here's a scenario. An investor purchases a property. Really, FHA VA loans are not really designed for investors like fix and flips and something, but it does happen.
Yeah.
And if an investor purchases a property and they fix the property up and everything, and they put it right back on the market for sale. They've gotten the property fixed up within 30 days, they put it back on the market for sale. Well, they probably purchased the property in a distressed situation and got the property at a lower price. And then that appraisal that was done at the lower price is going to stay with that property for, you said, 120 days.
There's that'll happen.
So you're going to have a problem with getting the price on an FHA loan if they're fixing and flipping it in that short amount of time frame.
Right. Yeah. And even if there wasn't an FHA loan at the beginning, if the investor just bought it cash, then the lender's still going to require two appraisals.
Exactly. So that's something to definitely be aware of if you're purchasing property, especially if you're doing a fix or flip, or you see like recent renovations done. You want to make sure that you do the proper research. And as a real estate professional, I feel like that's a part of my job when I represent you, to do the research to make sure that we're not getting to a situation where we're going to have a valuation problem.
Right.
What are some of the other valuation problems that you see out there from a buyer's perspective? Some snags in the process.
Sometimes the buyers get kind of caught up in the heat of the moment. There's multiple offers, and they're offering more than the property is probably worth. Sometimes I even hear that they're almost doing it on purpose in hopes that the appraisal will come in low and protect them. That's the idea. But on the other hand, you got to remember that an appraisal appraisers don't determine market value. We interpret market value. It's the buyers that are determining market value. So if it's within the realm of possibility to justify the purchase price, the appraiser most often will try to do that. So don't use that as a way to get a good deal on a property.
Exactly, because you just run so many risks doing that. But it does happen a lot, and
Yeah.
there are, especially in the Atlanta area, where properties, I would say 400,000 and under. There is typically bidding situations right now. We're low on inventory in that price range, so you find multiple offer situations quite often.
Right.
And especially for the summer of 2019, I expect that to continue to go on throughout the rest of the year, actually.
Yeah. And make sure your agent's doing their homework and really analyzing the comparable sales when they're helping you prepare that offer. There's a lot of misinformation out there. The tax record data is notoriously incorrect. So a good sharp agent like yourself is going to really look at those comparables and make sure that you're making the right price offer.
Speaking of misinformation, one of the things, and actually I learned this from your course, Zillow, which is a very popular website in the state of Georgia, their estimates are off. The estimates are off, and they actually have a disclaimer up on their website that in the state of Georgia, their estimates are off, and a lot of times home sellers will base their the price of their property based upon estimates, and home buyers, when they're doing their research, base their offers based upon the estimates.
Yeah.
And really, you cannot rely on the estimates. It's either going to be appraisal value, or you're going to have an agent who does the proper research and estimating that value for you.
Christian, here's the problem with Zillow, and that's a great point to bring up, is that Zillow's not always high, it's not always low, it's just always wrong. But here's the reason. Zillow gets all of their physical data for the comparables to put into their algorithms from tax records, and that tax records in Georgia are notoriously incorrect. They're recording gross building area, they're including basements, garages, porches as living area, which is not correct.
Mm-hmm.
But even if Zillow had perfect data, if they knew exactly the square footage and the room count and the basement size and all of that, how does Zillow know the condition, the quality, external influences, all kinds of other things that have such a huge impact on value? There's just no good website to go to out there. I mean, of those websites, maybe they're the best, but that still doesn't mean anything.
Like, give an example, a great example. Like, I've been in the business for a long time, so I know the difference between like an apartment grade, granite, and real quality granite. And the apartment grade granite is not going to add value to your kitchen, but you're talking about some high grade quality granite that's going to add value, and that's something that Zillow cannot tell the difference between.
They can't, no.
So very good point.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about an appraisal from a seller's perspective.
Sure.
One of the things that I always recommend, because sometimes real estate agents and home sellers have heated discussions about property values, and I always say, hey, let's not argue about it. Let's get an appraisal done. That way we can have, and that appraisal sometimes when you're marketing the property, it really helps the marketability of the property, because the buyers are not wondering if they're overpaying, for the property. So let's talk about what are your thoughts on that?
Exactly. We offer a consultation appraisal, and that's one of the biggest benefits, is to ease the mind of that buyer. And whether they agree or disagree with the bottom line, they've got all the physical data that they can analyze. They can look at the comparables that were used, compare them to the ones that them and their agent have found, and it really helps educate them. It usually helps speed up the negotiation process. Sellers typically will get a higher sales price. I mean, that knowledge is power when you're a seller, to have to know what it's worth. And because I'm sure when you're working as a buyer's agent, you're going to beat up that other agent and try to get the price down as low as you can for your buyer, and that's part of the business. So
it actually helps during the negotiation process, because when you're the listing agent and you present the appraisal to the buyer's agent, it's just like, okay, look, we're not asking for a ridiculous price. This is actually how much the house is valued, at. So, and especially when you're looking at luxury homes, because the valuation is very different.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on one second. I'm going to pause and just make sure that we're still recording.
Yeah, that's good. That makes
Keep
it
going.
huge files, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about the difference between evaluating property when you get into the luxury home market, because it is a totally different ball game. As a listing agent, I always say that you need to have an appraisal when it's a luxury home. It's just like no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
You're selling $500,000, $1 million, $2 million home. Invest $500 to $1,000 and get a true opinion of value, an unbiased opinion of value. Even when I have my own home appraised for a mortgage or something, I get emotional like a typical seller would. So we need to take that out of it. Let there be some unbiased input there. You need a very good experienced agent and a good experienced appraiser, one who really knows and understands that market. And understands that product type, because now you're talking about significant differences in quality, improvements, all these things that really have to be closely analyzed. It's not just square footage and number of bedrooms anymore. It's a lot more that goes into it. I mean, you put pool on the appraisal. Pool means nothing. Is it a gunite? Is it pebble tech? Does it have a pavilion? Does it have all the other things that have to be taken into consideration?
Great, that's great info. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you see that people or industry people try to attach value to?
Well, one thing, and I'll get more to specific to your question, a lot of people think that you do valuation as price per square foot. That doesn't mean anything in our market here. Maybe you've come from Florida or other places where everything is a very similar structure on a slab. Price per square foot might be more meaningful, and we'll use it in the condo world here, but we want to look at a true analysis of value. But there's a lot of things that that people will misconceive about the valuation process. Trying to you want to look closely at what a typical buyer is looking for in that market. What is the most important thing to them? A lot of times it's school district. But if you're up on Lake Lanier, school district doesn't really matter. So focusing and understanding on what the drivers of value are in that specific market is important.
There's a lot of new technologies and things like that out there, and one of the questions that arose on social media was, does special additions to a house, like say like a Tesla power adapter, does that add value to a house
Great question.
in today's market?
And just the question in general is, as an appraiser, my job is to put myself in the shoes of a typical buyer. So would a typical buyer pay for that particular amenity? And the Tesla energy thing might be a little bit unique because not everybody's got an electric car or something. But you put a screen porch on a house and the typical buyer is going to pay a premium for that. So for an appraiser to tell you, no, it doesn't add any value, is wrong. If you know as a buyer yourself, if it would add some value, then it should be taken into consideration.
So like if you lived in a town where they manufacture Teslas, it would definitely be of value. So
Exactly.
if that's like what's happening or the trend that's going on at the specific time. So there's no specific, answer, yes or no. It really depends on each situation and each property.
Will you see an adjustment for the Tesla adapter on my appraisal? No, but it'll be noted in there and I'll take it into consideration. I've got a range of value and there's certain things where I can go up and down on quality or condition based on some of these smaller amenities that don't necessarily have a line item adjustment.
Very good. Look, that was great information. Scott, I just want to thank you for talking to Scott. Tell us a little bit about how they can contact you.
Sure. I own DS Murphy Associates. We're headquartered here in Atlanta, but we have offices in 6 different states. So we can help you in Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, and California for some reason.
Awesome.
You can reach us through the web at dsmurphy.com. That's like David Scott, MURPHY.com. or our main phone number is 678-584-5900.
Thanks a bunch. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. You
Great
too.
talking to you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let me just double check it. Make sure.